WAAY 31 Hometown News at 10 starts now.
A vigil tonight to honor victims of the Mount Zion Baptist Church bus crash. I'm Bill Young.
And I'm Demetria McClinton. Today, church members of Mount Zion held services. The first since the crash where 17-year-old Sarah Harmoning died. And WAAY 31 followed the crash since it happened on Thursday near Hartsfield-Jackson International Airport. The tour bus from Mount Zion with 40 people aboard crashed as students and chaperones were headed to the airport for a flight to Africa on a mission trip.
The aftermath is still felt tonight in the Tennessee Valley, even for those not directly impacted. Tonight, Restoration Foursquare Church in Madison held a night of remembrance for the victims of that crash.
And WAAY 31's Adam Lucas spent 3 days gathering information in Atlanta, returned to Alabama, and then just returned from tonight's vigil, where the show of support was undeniable.
When we were in Atlanta covering the deadly crash, the pastor of the church that served as a reunification center near the crash site said that during times of crisis, one church family takes in another. Well, tonight we saw another instance of that here at Restoration Foursquare Church in Madison.
There's been a death in our family, and how we respond to that will determine, the outcome of this situation.
Members of Restoration Foursquare Church opened their doors Sunday night for an evening of remembrance for Sarah Harmoning and those affected by Thursday's deadly crash in Atlanta.
We really appreciate those that were here tonight in this event to help us start the healing process.
More than 10 churches were represented as prayers and songs were shared, and the evening ended with a tribute to Sarah's final journal entry she wrote on the bus prior to the crash.
June 8th, 2017, Sarah. I was just reminded of why I'm here, and that God has called me here, and He's done so for a reason.
We just want to come alongside Mount Zion and be as much of a blessing as possible.
This would warm her heart to know that her life would be celebrated in this way.
And it's not just local churches doing their part. Taziki's restaurant is also helping out. They told me they're donating food to the 5 families who still have people in Atlanta area hospitals. Reporting in Madison, Adam Lucas, WAAY 31 Hometown News.
All right, thanks so much, Adam. The funeral for 17-year-old Sarah Harmoning is set for tomorrow at Mount Zion Baptist Church, according to the chaplain with the Fulton County Police Department. The visitation starts at noon, with the funeral set to start at 2 p.m. And new since 5 tonight, 6 people remain in Atlanta area hospitals, according to the Fulton County Police Chaplain. 5 of those hospitalized are kids. The 6th is the driver of the bus. All are reported to be in stable condition.
Right now, I want to take you to the road where that wreck happened in Atlanta. Adam Lucas and I drove along Camp Creek Parkway the day after that crash. We wanted to see what it was like. It's very hilly with 2 lanes heading each direction, some turning lanes too. You can see that wide median down the stretch, but there is not any kind of barrier. The speed limit is 55 miles an hour, but I got to tell you, a lot of drivers seem to be going a lot faster. A Fulton County Police Deputy Chief and even the department's chaplain both told WAAY 31 the road is not dangerous. However, we dug into the history of Camp Creek Parkway and we found 5 deadly crashes in the past 5 years. I do want to make sure to emphasize, investigators said speed in this crash was not a factor. However, it is still not clear if the driver of the bus, all that's left of the bus right now in this video, will face any charges. WAAY 31 asked Fulton County Police directly, but they would not comment. At last word, they hadn't yet talked to the driver because he was still in the hospital. WAAY 31 looked into the vehicles owned by that church and discovered all 3 are all registered with the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration for interstate travel. According to the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, there are no previous violations or crashes. And I want to show you where you can find every piece of information that WAAY 31 gathered since Thursday's crash. Go to WAAYTV.com right now and simply look off to the right-hand side of our homepage.
And Bill, you went down to Atlanta on Thursday.
Correct.
You saw the aftermath, you saw everything, but what stood out to you the most about this whole thing?
There were 2 ways of kind of approaching this. There was obviously the emotional part of it, which I think we were all able to grasp even somewhat, but the reporter in me wanted to know, how did these emergency crews, and the hospitals included, even begin to deal with a situation like this? I learned from the deputy police chief and the deputy fire chief for Fulton County that there's planning that goes on years in advance. Different hospitals, years in advance, different hospitals know the severity of the patients which they can take. For example, Grady Memorial Level 1 Trauma Center, so that's where the most serious are going to go. Also, I went to Cherokee County, which is just north of Atlanta, and talked to a couple of first responders. Now, they were not part of the response team that went to the crash site, but they told me, it was very interesting, I thought so, when they first arrive on the scene of any kind of massive incident like what we saw, they first call for the least seriously injured to come near them. That way they clear the scene and are able to, the EMTs that is, as quickly as possible get to those with the more serious injuries.
Because I would
very
think
interesting.
Going into it, you would go for the ones who are hurt,
right,
and then go that way.
And they said that sometimes is the instinct, but when you are dealing with what they call a mass casualty situation, you got to find the ones that are least hurt at first and go from there.
Interesting stuff. All right. Well, new at 10, the Madison City Council will appoint its new police chief, David Jernigan, and it's happening tomorrow during the City Council meeting. Details about the contract agreement will be discussed, and Jernigan will start as the new police chief on July 3rd. And new tonight, House Democrats are calling for Attorney General Jeff Sessions' Russia testimony to be public. The former Alabama senator is expected to be questioned by the House Intelligence Committee about contacts with Russian officials before his appointment and conversations with former FBI Director James Comey on February 14th. Now, that is the day Comey testified that President Donald Trump pressured him to drop the investigation into former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn.
Puerto Rico could become the 51st state. That's because voters in Puerto Rico just today approved the idea. Of course, now it's up to Congress if they want to make any changes to the island's political status. Just tonight, the governor of Puerto Rico released this statement, quote, "From today going forward, the federal government will no longer be able to ignore the voice of the majority of the American citizens in Puerto Rico," end quote. 500,000 people voted for statehood, but a study showed it was still the lowest level of voter participation in any election in Puerto Rico since 1967. From the mayor of Orlando to the local sheriff to victims, social media is packed tonight with messages ahead of the one-year anniversary of the deadliest mass shooting in American history. A gunman killed 49 people inside the Pulse nightclub in Orlando and injured 58 others June 12th of last year. Investigators said the shooter was inspired by ISIS. They opened fire inside that packed nightclub and even at one point took hostages.
My own personal friends that died there, family members, but it was hard, very hard.
There are events planned for all across the country, including, of course, in Orlando for the first anniversary of that attack. Ceremony in Orlando, in fact, is going to be held where the name of each person who died will be read aloud. New tonight, quite a big turnout today as a lot of people marched the streets of downtown Huntsville for the 6th annual Pride Parade.
And today was the start of a week of activities for Rocket City Pride. It was hosted by Free to Be. That's a group which provides services to minority victims of violence, bullying, and abuse. This year's parade was a special tribute to a past director of the Equality March.
Day of love, support, happiness. Just happy to be here.
Vincent was our Pride director and he died a few months ago. So we're remembering Vincent now because he was all about community and fighting for equality.
And for other Pride events happening this week, just head to our website, WAAYTV.com. And Decatur is using federal grant money to add to the city's bike trails. $333,000 will be used to extend the Bill Sims Bike Trail into the southwest part of Decatur. Mayor Tab Bowling said the extension will give the trail a much-needed connection to Jack Allen Park and even 5 other schools.
All right, some breaking news just into the WAAY 31 newsroom. Want to take you live right now to the streets of Nashville. No doubt a lot of tears being shed. That is because the Pittsburgh Penguins won the Stanley Cup. They beat out the Preds on the Preds home turf. Final score 2-0. I mean, this one was down to the wire. Sarah Hodges, of course, going to be talking a whole lot more about this coming up in sports. Good night for my friends who live in Pittsburgh. Bad night for my friends who live in Nashville.
Yeah, and a lot of people around the Tennessee Valley who are all glued to the television watching that. Well, buyers of Chef Boyardee need to beware because a massive recall was just issued.
The problem most people wouldn't even notice, but could be lethal to others. That's coming up.
All right, so we had another hot and muggy day all across the Tennessee Valley, but what about our rain chances? I'll let you know what you can expect when you wake up tomorrow, coming up after the break.
Protecting, informing, investing.